Okay, so I'm going to show you how to make some fruity muffins. I've got an apron on, got my hair tied back. I'm just going to wash my hands, make sure that they're clean before I start. And I've got a nice clean workspace and all my equipment has been washed. Right, first thing I'm going to do is to turn my oven on. You want it on a gas mark 4. So we're going to put the main oven around onto a gas mark 4. If you were using an electric oven, you want it on about 180. And the other bit of preparation work that you can do is to put some muffin cases into your muffin tin. There's a couple of different size cases that you can get. These are the muffin cases, they're quite large, and this is a muffin tin. But you can get smaller cases which look like this. You can see the difference in size. They've got a much smaller capacity and you'd need a different size tin for those. If possible, we're going to use the larger muffin size ones. Okay, so we're going to measure our ingredients out. It's a really simple recipe. Basically all of the ingredients go in together apart from the fruit, and we're going to mix them all together. So I'm going to show you how to weigh and measure and explain some of the ingredients to you. So you want a set of digital scales preferably, put any bowl on the top, it doesn't matter, and then turn it on and make sure that the scales read both 0 and G for grams. I'm going to take some self-raising flour, any brand is fine, and measure about 250 grams. Now if I was making a cake as opposed to a muffin, it's gone too far, let's just spin some of that out. Plus or minus a couple of grams is fine on there. 251, that'll do. If I was making a cake, for every 250 grams of flour that I was using, I'd also use 250 grams of fat, 250 grams of sugar, and 250 grams of eggs. And I'm only going to be using 100 grams of sugar, and I'm only going to be using 60 millilitres of oil, so it's a much healthier option than a standard cake. Now the type of flour I've used is self-raising flour. That means that it's plain flour, essentially with baking powder added into it already, and that produces carbon dioxide, which is going to help the whole thing rise in the oven. Second ingredient I'm going to use is some baking powder, and we want 2 teaspoons of this. And when we have a teaspoon, we don't have it raised above the top of the measuring spoon. This is a measuring spoon, so we can get it nice and accurate. It could do with being passed through a sieve, actually, that, because it's been in my cupboard a little while and it's gone a little bit lumpy. So I'm just going to measure it into my sieve. I didn't sieve out the flour, but you could do, just make the texture of it a little bit lighter. So 2 level teaspoons of that. And we're just going to press that through the sieve. You can see how lumpy it is. I'll still do the same job. Then I'm going to put some caster sugar in, 100 grams of caster sugar. So just make sure that your scales are still on 0 and G for grams. We're going to measure 100 grams, plus or minus a couple again, 102, that'll do. And caster sugar's got a much finer grain to it than a granulated sugar. This is a granulated sugar, and the grains of the sugar are a lot chunkier, if you can see. This caster sugar is much better to use for cake making and biscuit making because it's nice and fine, it dissolves much more readily. Right, next ingredient is the milk, and we want 230 millilitres. Now, measuring small quantities accurately in a measuring jug is really difficult because 200 is right the way down here, and then it goes to 250 and then 300. So to get 230 is going to be really difficult to get accurate. So what I tend to do is actually use scales for measuring liquids. 230 millilitres of milk is going to measure 230 grams, so I can just use that. So let's get the milk out of the fridge. I'm going to use semi-skimmed milk, but you can use whatever you've got. It takes a while when you're pouring for the scales to catch up sometimes, so take it fairly steady. 210. It's going to be hard to get it accurate with the milk because 227. 229, that'll do, that's close enough for me. and that's going to go in a minute into our mixture. Okay. We're also going to crack in an egg. Now, if you've got something metal to hand, it's easier to crack an egg off of something metal than it is off something plastic, to be honest. So just get the end of my spoon, crack it, pull the two sides apart so it goes in, and we'll pop that to one side out of the way. And the last ingredient that we're going to use is the oil. We want 60 millilitres of oil. I'm just going to use a really bland, just a vegetable oil or a sunflower oil is perfect. You don't want anything with too much flavour like an olive oil, it'd be too overbearing. And 1 tablespoon is equals to 15 millilitres. So if I want 60, that's 15, 30, 45, 60, so 4 tablespoons. And again, I'm using a measuring spoon for accuracy. If I were to use a spoon like this, the capacity of that is going to be significantly less. That's more like 10 mils, and you need to use 6 of those. So if you've got measuring spoons to hand, they're going to be better. And then you can either mix this together using a wooden spoon, which I've got here, but I've got a whisk. So I'm going to use it. It's plugged into the wall. And pop the beaters in. Make sure that they click so they don't fall straight out. Okay, they're not going to fall. And then you've got 3 speed settings. This is the button to eject the beaters when you're finished. So I'm going to hold on to the bowl with one hand and I'm going to mix with the other, starting on a low speed. You just want to mix all of those ingredients together. Once all of the flour's incorporated, you can take up the speed a little. We're just going to mix that until it's nice and smooth. Mix the ingredients just until we've got a smooth batter. And now we're going to think about what fruit we want to put into it. Tinned fruits are a really good choice because they're already cooked in the tin, which softens the fruit and it makes it much more, it makes it much softer when it's in the muffins already. Just a pale fruit like tinned apricots, peaches, pears work really well. If you use any dark fruits like blueberries or raspberries, they can overpower and change the colour of the mixture so that you end up with bright purple muffins or something, which can sometimes look a bit odd. But equally you could use some dried fruit if that's all you've got. Dried apricots chopped up, some raisins or sultanas will work really well. I've got half a tin of pears in my fridge, which were opened the other day. So I'm going to drain the juice off of those just by passing it through a sieve. And then taking it to the board, we want about 150 grams of fruit. Cut it up into quite small pieces so that each muffin has a few pieces of fruit in it. And once we've done that, we're going to stir it into the mixture. So I've chopped all my fruit up into small pieces and I'm going to stir it into the mixture here. And to use any spices like ginger or cinnamon or mixed spice or anything like that, you could. I'm going to use some ground ginger because pear and ginger works really well together. I'm not going to measure it exactly, I'm just going to put a little sprinkle from the lid. Dog's going a bit mad in the background, sorry about that. And I'm just going to give that a little stir in until it's all mixed together. Then we're going to take 2 spoons. I'm going to take I've got my dessert spoon here, and I'm going to take a spoonful and then use a second spoon to scrape it off the spoon. And I'm just going to put 1 spoonful in each cake case to start off with, and then if I've got any left I can go back. It's really important to make sure there's an equal amount in every single cake case. So I finished filling the cake cases. You can see that they're all about 2/3 full. We don't want to fill them too much because they've got self-raising flour and baking powder, so we are going to get quite a bit of rise on these. What we're going to see is them sort of going up in the middle into a dome. If they're peaking up and starting to go really dark on the top, then we can turn the oven temperature down. But we're going to cook them for about 20 to 25 minutes. So I'm going to put these in for 20 minutes and then we'll have another look at them. Using the oven gloves for safety. Do be aware of any parts of your hands which aren't covered by the oven gloves, because if they come into contact with the hot shelf in the oven, then that could be quite sore. So to set the timer, you're going to press the button. On the display in school, you've only got 3 buttons. You're going to press the one in the middle and then the up. For mine, it's on the left and then up, until you get to 20, and that timer will go off when we get to 20 minutes. We'll have a look and check them. Okay, so that's the end of the 20 minutes, so I'm just going to have a quick look at them. Okay, so I can look at them quickly and see that they're still quite pale. I think they could do with a little bit longer in the oven, so I'm going to pop them back in for another 5 minutes, and we'll check them again in 5 minutes. Right, so I've carefully taken these out the oven now. They've been in for about 25 minutes, and you can see that they're a nice golden colour. For some reason the ones at the front are a bit more golden than the ones at the back. That's my oven for you. If I just give them a press, they're nice and firm, and if I were to stick a clean knife, fork or skewer into the cake, we wouldn't expect to see, into the muffin, we wouldn't expect to see any wet mixture on there, just possibly a little bit of juices from the fruit. So we're going to transfer those onto a cooling rack, leave them to cool down, and then they'll be ready to eat.